I'm therefore going to call on Government Order of the Day number 3.
Local Government Act 2002 Amendment Bill, interrupted debate on third reading.
I understand that the next speaker is a Labour Party call. I call the honourable member, Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to speak, sir, to the parts of this bill that relate to the issue of development contributions. That is the way that councils levy developers for the cost of infrastructure and services for new residential developments. Now, this bill, sir, the Local Government Act 2002 Amendment Bill number 3, had a close shave. It almost didn't make it back to the House for a third reading before the House rises for the general election campaign. And it was a surprise to us that the Prime Minister a few weeks back basically tried to blame Labor for not supporting this bill and therefore saying it couldn't get passed. After 5 years of talking about the need to reform the regime on development contributions and try to make housing more affordable, this government almost failed to pass this bill before the end of the parliamentary term. So we are supporting this bill because of the provisions on development contributions, not because we think they are fantastic, because they're not. They are actually pretty weak and inadequate. But we're supporting them, sir, because they are better than nothing. And in a housing crisis like we have now in New Zealand, where there's an acute shortage, particularly in Auckland and Canterbury, where not enough houses are being built, and we think, sir, that it is the right thing to do to try to remove the obstacles to new homes being built and try to make new housing more affordable. So that's why we're supporting this bill. We don't think it's going to achieve that much, and it does have some negative unintended consequences, but in the context of a housing shortage, we think that it is worth supporting it. What does the bill do? It has two main provisions. One is that it sets up an appeal process whereby developers will be able to appeal development contributions that are being levied on their project if they believe that the levies are inconsistent with the council's policy. The second thing that it does is that it will prohibit councils levying these development contributions in order to pay for libraries and swimming pools and other community infrastructure. And so that has been a controversial provision, and some colleagues in this House have argued, and I think there are some, I put some weight on those arguments, that this may lead to new developments being put in place that don't have those kind of vital community facilities. The government hopes that these reforms may knock something like $3,000 off the cost of a new house. We haven't seen any rigorous analysis of how they come to that figure, but what we do know is that development contributions generally, on average, amount to about 4% on the cost of a new home. They can in fact add anything between sort of $10,000 and $15,000 onto the cost of a new house. Our view, Mr. Speaker, is that this bill, in regard to development contributions, is a wasted opportunity. The effect of these provisions will be to shift the cost from the purchasers of new homes to ratepayers. And that's something, you know, we need to actually reduce the cost of new housing. So you could make an argument in the current housing shortage that that's worth doing, but it's a pretty insignificant gain, sir. And I just want to say that we believe, that Labor believes, this was an opportunity to think far more thoughtfully and about more fundamental reform of the way that we pay for infrastructure and services for new residential developments, sir. And I want to give the House 3 examples of things that the government could have done when thinking about this issue. So the first is that this was a great opportunity to consider how the development contributions could have been restructured to incentivise different kinds of development. So instead of levying development contributions on a single dwelling to recover a share of the cost of all the infrastructure and services that new dwelling would need, why not apply those development contributions spatially? Why not apply them per square metre to the lot size or to the house size? And by doing that, thereby encourage the kind of medium density developments, the greater density that we need, particularly in our towns and cities. So why not give councils that kind of flexibility? Why not apply, for example, a differential that would have allowed councils to apply development contributions at a different rate for grey and brownfields developments? Because in our major cities, we desperately need to encourage more intensification and more urban development within the city and not out on the fringes, encouraging more and more sprawl. But no, the government, I don't think, even considered those kind of options. The other idea that should have been considered, sir, is to, instead of loading all of the cost of the infrastructure and services, and it's a significant amount of money, because, as I said, development contributions might be $10,000 or $15,000, but it's not uncommon for houses being built in a new greenfields development to have to pay another $30,000, $40,000 or even $50,000 to lay the infrastructure, the roads, the footpaths, the drainage, the water supply, the broadband, the electricity, the street lights, the parks, you name it. All of that infrastructure and services gets loaded onto the cost of the new house. That is not only a cost to the person who purchases that house. No, that cost is capitalised into the market value of that house and every other house in the market. So if you add $50,000 or $60,000 onto the cost of new houses, that is a significant addition to the marginal cost of new housing in that town or city. And that gets capitalised in to the market value of not only new housing but all housing. So that has a really significant inflationary effect on the cost of new housing. And as we know, that is a huge barrier to first home buyers. So if you think about the fact that house prices in Auckland now are, on average, hitting $700,000. They're increasing by $72,000 a year. That's a huge barrier. It's no wonder that home ownership rates are dropping. It's no wonder that first home buyers have almost disappeared from the market. So if the government had been willing to consider more fundamental reform, it would have had a look at, for example, the municipal urban development entities that are part of the institutional scene in Texas, for example, where new residential developments are happening. They create this new development entity. They fund the infrastructure, all of the roading, the street lights, the drainage, the water, the electricity and so on. All of that gets funded through issuing 30-year bonds, sir. So that is funding the lifetime of that infrastructure, and people pay that back through a targeted rate. Now, the value in that is that, sure, someone still has to pay for that infrastructure, but you're spreading it over, say, a 30 or 40-year lifetime of the infrastructure. You're not loading it all onto the price tag of the new house and seeing that extra cost capitalised into the value of that house and all other housing. So the government didn't take this opportunity to reform development contributions. It simply is shoveling the cost onto the ratepayers in a way that ratepayers and councils all around this country will I'm sure, resent. And it typifies the kind of tinkering, superficial approach that this government has taken to the issue of housing affordability. They've been in office for 6 years. This bill is the best they can do for reforming development contributions. That is sad. That is really sad. On the RMA, they've been talking about reforming the RMA for housing affordability and urban development. They haven't even been able to bring a bill back to the House, sir, in this in this parliamentary term on speeding up consenting for new residential construction. And on building materials, which they've also been talking about for the last few years, the best they could do was that pathetic little bit of legislation that they passed during the budget to take off tariffs and anti-dumping duties on some building materials that will, they hope, will reduce the cost of a new house by $3,500, which is about 2.5 weeks of house price inflation in Auckland, Mr. Speaker. So this is the sort of tinkering approach, the manic effort by the Housing Minister, Nick Smith, to look busy, to look as if he's doing something. And, sir, it is a wasted opportunity. The people of New Zealand deserve much more.
I call the Honourable Member Maggie Barry.